All right, it says we're live. You ready? Here we go.
Hey, yo. Hey, Young. We're here today to talk about the Native American Environmental Protection Coalition's and project. A little bit about NAEPC. Our mission is to respect tribal sovereignty, but we are dedicated to providing technical assistance, environmental education, professional training, information networking, and intertribal coordination as directed by our member tribes. So we have 27 member tribes. Next slide. We also provide a cadre of programs from environmental education, professional training, information networking between tribes, advocating for environmental justice, partnerships and collaborations with outside organizations to bring training to our tribes. We also disseminate information to our member tribes, and we work on issues along the US-Mexico border. We also have a website where you can find out more information about us, and we also provide underground storage tank inspections for those member tribes who are engaged in the operation and ownership of gas stations. Next slide. We have, as they said, we have 27 member tribes throughout the state of California, in Nevada, and in New Mexico. We have 9 active project participants on this project with our environmental networking project, which we are really are excited about. We have just received notification of a 3rd grant for this program. So the Exchange Network projects help tribes build their tribal capability, their technical know-how. We provide training and assistance to them. It helps build tribal capacity and reduces overall cost of managing your data collection. We also provide continuity in the sense that if your staff member, tribal staff always changes, we are able to kind of start from ground zero with a new person, teach them quickly where they're at and how they can move forward. One of the things that I didn't include on here is my belief as a former tribal leader, having served on my tribal council. One of the things that I think is super exciting about the exchange program is that it also helps tribes build their sovereignty, in the sense that when we are having to work with other outside agencies who want to know if our data is being scientifically collected and collated, that we can give them assurance that our data is good, and strengthen our position from a sovereignty perspective of being able to argue with those outside agencies. So I see this as a crucial tool for building tribal sovereignty. Next. We are able to reuse and leverage existing systems, meaning that you don't have to recreate the wheel. We can take the data and however you have it and bring it into the system. We're able to expand the system for participants. Through these grants, we're able to build a better machine, so to speak, on a single shared platform. And what that means is it's a web-based software that's in one location. So I don't really like the idea of saying shared platform, but when we think about a bank, we all use the same bank, but we all have our own accounts, and that's kind of what it is. It also empowers local decision making, and again, saves time and effort when providing data to EPA and others. Mark, take it away.
Yeah. So my name is Mark Lebaron. I work for Gold Systems. I think I've presented at a few of these in the past, so some of you may know me. But I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, some of the details of the different solutions that we're working with NAEPC or NAEPC to provide. and the shared platform and those kinds of things. But before we start, I just want to talk a little bit about the EPA's Exchange Network. This is actually an image that I grabbed from the Exchange Network website, and it kind of gives a quick overview about partners creating agreements, the data publishers, they maintain a dedicated computer, and then step 3 is they generate XML to provide data to one another or to the EPA using what are called nodes on this network, and they exchange information seamlessly. And it sounds so easy, right? Like, it sounds like, wow, that's 4 easy steps. But the truth is, this is all a great idea, but it's not actually so easy to implement, as many of you may already be familiar with, especially if you're on a limited budget or have limited time, and it's not your primary job to make this all work. And so, one of the things that's really great about these projects with NAEPC is, as Jill mentioned, there's no need for everybody to duplicate efforts. And why reinvent the wheel? And why not get the most people and the most programs, the most software and capability at the least possible cost? So so that's what we're working on. And so when we talk about a shared platform here, these images might provide a little bit of insight into the kinds of things we're talking about. So what this is trying to convey is this concept of a single sign-on into a single cloud-based system. As Jill mentioned, you have your own secure portal with your own secure data, where you don't have to share data with anyone unless you want to. But the key is, you log in with your own sign-on and your own account. And then once you log in, not only do you have access to maybe things that you've traditionally had access to, for example, the ambient water quality monitoring system, which we'll talk about in a moment, but if you wear many hats in your organization, you could potentially also have access to other apps as well. So, for example, what we're showing here is the ambient water quality monitoring system. There's kind of like a link for navigating to that, another one for navigating to what we're currently calling local assessment management system. That's for water quality assessments. And then there's also a tribal open dumps data system. We're currently calling that TODS, and a state and tribal air quality system, stacks. And we're going to talk about each of these. And then, but there's also this common user organization and access rights capability from the portal, documentation and videos, and training and user materials. And then coming soon is this idea of a common cross media map. So, for example, the idea would be to be able to see, for example, maybe my air quality monitoring sites or my ambient water quality monitoring sites in context of illegal dumps that might be nearby, that kind of thing, all on the same map. So sometimes people are calling that a spatial viewer, is a term that we hear thrown around quite a bit. So anyway, but those are some of the kinds of things we're talking about when we talk about a shared platform and kind of a common platform that's like cross media. And in tribes especially, this is helpful because many tribal members that we work with wear multiple hats, and so they might be both the water quality tech and helping to track illegal dumps on tribal land or that kind of thing. And so, or they might be involved in air quality monitoring. So, um, and we'll talk more about other things that are coming that would also be added into this portal. But as we add more capability, you'd have access to these different apps depending on the user privileges that you have set up for your organization within the portal. So moving forward, just a quick rundown. This will be very quick, but for anyone who's not familiar with it, it's kind of a something we've been working with NAEPC for a long time and supporting. It's the Ambient Water Quality Monitoring System, and this is used by many tribes across the continental United States. And the so NAEPC's one of several different major customers, but they provide this as a service to participants of their Exchange Network grant project. And so they're able to provide a lot of capability at a very low cost per tribe. In fact, the participants themselves don't have to pay anything because it's all essentially funded by the grant. And so the goal of the grant was to adopt and enhance the ambient water quality monitoring system, or AQUAMS. And that what AQUAMS does is it allows you to, in a nutshell, consolidate all of your water quality monitoring data, validate it, and share that, analyze it, assess it, share it with with the Water Quality Exchange or other tribes if you care to do so. And or even other entities. So just really quick, let's talk the way when you get into the portal, and you would navigate into this AQUAMS element or AQUAMS app, ambient water quality monitoring system. And then what AQUAMS is in a nutshell is it allows for customizable data import or batch import of monitoring data, customizable manual entry forms. So you can have as many of these import mappings or manual data entry forms as you need. So for example, you might have one field form to match your field sheets for collecting field observations. You might have another manual entry form for transposing data from, say, a logger, or you might have a customized batch import that automatically imports files from a data logger. And so you can have as many of those as you need, and it's totally customizable. And the thing that's really neat about that feature is, or these features, is that it allows you to customize AQUAMS one time to match your files and not have to constantly, tweak your files so that they'll go into AQUAMS. So it's like one-time customization versus constantly having to modify your data files. So once you've got that these configurations or customized import forms or import configurations and entry forms done, you don't have to keep redoing it. It's a one-time deal, and then all of your files and data will flow easily into AQUAMS. AQUAMS will hold any data that WQX can hold, and it'll even generate summary data for continuous data that you might have. It will also hold the raw continuous or time series data, and it'll download data from the National Water Quality portal, so that you can include, for example, USGS data in your own analysis alongside your own data. It's just one example of why that could be useful. You can also, it provides limited automated data validation and QC as you load your data into AQUAMS. And that's true whether you manually enter your data or whether you batch import your data. And so examples of that would be, you could put in range value checking. So if you're bringing in a data value for a parameter that is just out of whack, like maybe you've fat fingered a decimal or something, AQUAMS will flag that and tell you, hey, you might want to take a look at this. Also, it will tell you if you're getting unexpected units of measure, that kind of thing. So also, AQUAMS enforces every business rule that WQX enforces. So when your data goes into AQUAMS, once it's in there and you can look at it, vet it, it will flow easily to WQX. And then it provides local data analysis tools, batch data scrubbing tools. So for example, let's say you've got an intern that, again, using that example of maybe they entered the wrong unit of measure for 1,000 records, you can fix all 1,000 of those at a time without having to go through each record individually. So that kind of thing is what we mean by data management and vetting. There's built-in Google Maps. We'll show you some of those. You can easily flow data, as I mentioned, to EPA's Water Quality Exchange. And that can actually be set up to be automated nightly, or you can trigger it with a click of a button. And also you can configure what flows and when it flows. So you don't have to send all of your data. You might have just certain projects you want to send, or certain parameters that you want to send. And so that's all configurable. You have local data sharing and integration tools. So there are various web services, which is a way for different information systems to communicate easily. There's a web feature service, which is for integrating with GIS tools. So you can see your monitoring locations and associated data in, for example, an Esri ArcGIS map or other GIS tools. There are REST web services, so you just get raw data out of Aquums, or other types of metadata out of Aquums that maybe you want to integrate into other systems somehow. There's also another service for just getting data out from Aquums, and that's using the virtual exchange services that the Exchange network provides. And as I mentioned, well, I don't think I mentioned this yet, but there's also web services for providing well and groundwater data to the National Groundwater Monitoring Network. Um, and then there's one other type of web services that Aquams provides, and that is web services it's called sensory observation services, and that's specifically for time series or continuous monitoring data. Aquams is what you call a continuous monitoring data appliance, and provides data to the EPA's pilot interoperable watersheds network. So, and again, all of the sharing is only if you want to. If you publish your data, then it becomes shareable. If you decide not to publish your data, then it's not shared. And then, of course, there are numerous different types of data exports, for example, as Excel spreadsheets, etc. Okay, so let's show some of that. So, and again, I'm not going to show everything in Aquams or anything like that, but I'll just show you kind of, for anyone who hasn't seen Aquams, maybe some cool stuff that gives you a little bit of an idea of kind of what we're talking about. And I think I've got that portal open. Make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing here. Okay. So this is this elements portal, we're calling it for now, and all of these names may change as time goes on. Everything you're about to see is morphing at this very moment, and evolving as we try to bring things together in integrated ways. So I'm logging into this sort of development and test environment as kind of a super user, so that I can show a lot of different stuff. So I sign in, and as I mentioned before, this takes me to this kind of landing page. And in the future, you'll see that integrated map as one of the links here, that integrated common cross-media map. That's in the process, and I can show you some progress on that today. So we're talking about Aquams right now, so we'll jump to that in a moment. Do want to point out, though, that this kind of shared portal, this is where you would manage organizations, users, and access rights for a given user and organization, regardless of whether you're talking about Aquams or one of these other apps. So it's we've leveraged work that had already been done for multiple applications, so that we didn't have to redo that same work for multiple things. And that's one of the principles of the Exchange network, is to try to reuse work that's already been done. So, but if I navigate to Aquams, and again, we're in a development and test environment, so I do not guarantee that everything I try is going to work. In fact, I'll be surprised if everything works in this environment, but we've tried to set things up so that things will work properly. So when I log in here, it puts me on this data analysis page. It's kind of my home page. That's something that's configurable within Aquams. And just for fun, right off the bat, I want to show you something that we've done recently that's kind of cool. If I go to the maps in Aquams, I'll show you, let's go to this interactive map. And this is all based on Google Map technology. I'm going to load a pre-configured set of search criteria that I already set up earlier this morning. That's my Mark's 2021 Region 9 conference presentation is what I'm calling it. So I click that and it preloads all of these tabs so I don't have to load them, but I'll show you what I chose. I chose this organization, FP test, other search criteria. I chose many different types of data. I put in an absolute date range of all of 2018. And I selected all of the activity types. These are all WX based. I chose, sorry, I can't see past my camera, result status. I'm excluding preliminary and rejected just as a practice. We do that when we do demos because we don't want to show, we want to make sure we're not showing data that is not public. So I've done that. And then I didn't filter anything on the biological tab. And then under parameters, I said that I want to select individual parameters. And then I chose dissolved oxygen from their list. And this shows that I have 245 DO entries for that year. So then I create my map by clicking the create map button, and it generates the map. And the thing I want to show you that I think is so cool. I mean, this map technology is cool, but it's been around in Aquas for a long time. But the thing that's kind of new that we're working on is that kind of gives you an idea of where we're headed. Is now I've got these different layers I can put in, and the one I want to show you is my open dump sites, and these would actually be like I think you'd probably think of these more as illegal open dumps. And when I click that, it adds a new layer in, and these are coming in from our open dumps tracking tool into this common map. So this will all eventually be moved out to the portal instead, and you won't have to get into Aquams necessarily to run this kind of capability. So I can now see that next to this monitoring site, that, you know, I can review the data for that site if I want, but I can also see that, oh, I've got, there's an open dump right by that site. And maybe that's why I'm seeing the results that I'm seeing at that site, you know. So if I were to, you know, run the, you know, go look at the data for dissolved oxygen from that map, this might explain kind of why I'm seeing what I'm seeing, is that, hey, there's an open dump right there. So that's the kind of thing we're trying to do with the maps. And this also gives you a little bit of an idea of what I can do for within the Aquams, like data analysis tools. I can run all kinds of graphs and do various different kinds of data analysis. Let's see here. I'll get back to Aquams here. So that's just kind of one example of some of the analysis I can do within Aquams, and it's showing some of the newer capability. It also, on that map, I don't know if you saw, but there were different, you could show HUCs as layers, so you can see your monitoring locations within the different hydrological unit code, I guess catchments and whatnot. Okay, so, but again, if I just kind of showing you, kind of poking around in Aquams, just showing you some of the capability. I think it's important to kind of show kind of what's sort of a flagship feature of Aquams. I mentioned the ability under setup to, you can configure import configurations for multiple batch import capability, and you can import all kinds of stuff. You can import monitoring location and well data or well information. You can import activities and results data, project, if you have a list of projects. So when you're getting started in Aquams, this batch import's really helpful in importing initial data and metadata. So, and just to give you an idea of what that looks like, let's go look at one of these import mappings. So here's one for activities and results. And what it's allowing you to do is map the data elements in Aquums or they're essentially WQX data elements. You can map those to the columns in your import file, and it can get really complex. It's very full featured. You can import matrix type spreadsheets. You can import row by row spreadsheets. You can import spreadsheets that have multiple parameters per row, that kind of thing. So you can import a lot of different things, and if you just have to configure this one time, and then you can import that type of file over and over and over. So it saves a lot of time. And then similarly, I mentioned that you can set up as many different data entry pages as you need. It works very similarly to this, but it's all configurable. You don't need to do any software programming to set up a new data entry page. And the thing that's really nice about that is you can make your data entry page in Aquums match visually almost your paper forms if you're carrying paper out, or if you've got some kind of PDF file or something that you're filling out. So that's just one of the cool features of Aquums, is the configurability of the import mechanisms. Boy, let's see what time we have. Okay, so just moving along. Once you bring data, so you can use those import configurations and data entry forms to either import data into the system using these different tools. You can also enter data using various different tools, the forms that I mentioned earlier that you've configured. And then once your data is in, you can quickly and easily kind of review your data. This is all under the review menu. So for example, if I wanted to review activities that have been imported, let's go look at the same organization that I had mentioned earlier. I'll just do a quick search, but I can filter and search by a lot of different means and mechanisms. I can even search by location. I can even paste a list of location IDs into this little form here, and then it'll let me search for just those locations, or I can highlight them on a map. But anyway, just to very quickly show you how this works, I fill out my search criteria, and then I click search, and it gives me all of the activities that match my search criteria. It gives me those back as a list page, and then I can drill into the activity and see the details about that activity. There are a lot of fields that aren't filled in that are not required, but we have everything that WQX would want. And then down below, you can see all of the results that tie to that activity. And then you can drill into those. And I won't go into that detail, but you can review the results themselves here. You can do the same kind of search first. You can filter by different means, and then see just the list of results without going through the activity, and so on and so forth. So you can review all kinds of the different metadata, and then also the monitoring data, the metrics, and index scores as well. That's all under the review menu. And then the batch menu allows you to do batch scrubbing and data cleanup and identify issues in the data. Won't go into a lot of detail, but you can even do like merging and splitting of assessment units. If you're into merging and splitting assessment units, we'll talk more about that momentarily, maybe. You can, we already showed you the different analysis tools, some of those. I won't go into tons of those, but we did see a box and whiskers plot, but there's numerous different kinds of tools, and this is a really cool set of tools where you can enter your search criteria, so it'll remember from usage to usage what your search criteria was. So anyway, so as you can see here, it remembers that I was looking at data from 118 for all of 2018 previously, so it remembered that, so I don't have to re-enter it. So I can look at the same data in different ways. And so just as a, and it remembered that I was looking at dissolved oxygen. So just as a, let's see if it will generate that graph quick. Yeah, so I got to select the parameter for the y-axis. So 1 second here. So this is a bivariate scatter plot, and I only had one parameter selected. So let me back up here. Okay. Anyway, let me pick one that only requires one parameter. Let me back up here. Wouldn't be a good demo if something didn't go wrong. Let me go just to a single parameter line graph, just so I don't have to fill out all the search criteria. But oh, I got to select a media. 1 second here. So there are certain things that are required as you perform some of this. Some of these graph and some of the analysis. Oh, I got it. And I hadn't selected any monitoring locations. And I think in the, I think in the previous, yeah, it changed organizations on me really quick. So let me get back to our test organization here and make sure I've selected everything that I'm supposed to. And actually, let's just do a few of these because I don't want to get too many. So I'm selecting some organizations here, or some locations, accepting those. And then let's see. So now we have some data that's come back. I've got 17 values within that period for those monitoring locations. And go ahead and create the graph. And so I'm just giving you an idea of the kinds of things you can do really quickly without going into too much detail. But you can do all kinds of analysis of your data that way. Now, I mentioned, I guess without going too much further, that's kind of just a Aquams in a nutshell. And so let's move on. Let me get back to here. We'll go back out to our portal and minimize that. Okay, so we showed some cool stuff in Aquams. All right. So the next thing is we want to, well, okay, so the next thing was that we, as part of the grants, the various different grants, we're trying to implement other available Aquams related tools. One of which that's being or has been and is still being worked on is the local water quality assessments management and submission to attains using a system called LAMS, or what we're currently calling Local Assessment Management System. And then also another one, Open Dumps Tracking, which I've mentioned several times now, or TODS. So we'll take a quick look at those. So attains, that's for local water quality assessment management and submission to attains using LAMS. We're going to reuse these LAMS capabilities that are being developed so that NAEPC tribal members can use those without necessarily having to develop them themselves. And I'm not sure how many people out there are familiar with attains, but it's essentially for gathering and tracking water quality assessments for the biennial, and I think generally we think of biennial reporting to Congress, but it also on the back end of that feeds into different EPA information systems that help people understand how their waterway is performing, or whether it's meeting water quality standards and that kind of thing for various different uses. So just jumping into that, the way from that elements portal, you'd get into the local assessment management system element or app by clicking on that link. And LAMS in a nutshell, is It's then as I mentioned, the name will probably change on a lot of these, and we'll probably get some kind of logos instead of the photos or images that we're currently using. But it has, you'll have single sign-on to this environmental portal, auto-initialize metadata from attains and or aquums. So for example, the relationships between your monitoring locations and your assessment units, things like that. Also, what are the different uses for that assessment unit? So what the water that's in that assessment unit, what are the different designated uses like fishing or agriculture? All of that metadata can be initialized from the combination of attains and aquums. And so LAMS is quite heavily tied into aquums. It's quite integrated with aquums currently. And that's for good reason. So LAMS, it also snapshot metadata and monitoring data from aquums for each assessed unit or assessment unit for historical researchability and defensibility. So the as a LAMS user, you basically say, okay, I'm going to start assessing this assessment unit, and it will go out to aquums and get the latest metadata and snapshot that before you start that assessment in LAMS. Then you log and maintain your water quality assessments and also actions and TMDLs in LAMS, and also the updated metadata for the assessment unit. And then you can easily submit all of that, the assessments and related actions and TMDLs and assessment unit definition information to attains. And that's all via the Exchange network. LAMS, a key thing it does is auto cycles forward or auto rolls forward information from reporting cycle to reporting cycle so that you don't have to re-enter that information over and over. Also, it provides limited assessment decision support based on aquums and WQX data versus water quality criteria comparison. So if you have all of that in aquums, then you can you can actually evaluate your actual values against water quality criteria. Now, as I mentioned, it's limited, but we're trying to work on improving that so that it provides better decision support as we move forward in the future. And let's see. So in the future, we want to provide a link into that. We want to integrate into that shared common map with aquum, stacks, and TODs. So for example, being able to see your aquums / WQX water quality monitoring stations in terms of or in context of your assessment unit definitions, that kind of thing. That's not there yet, but it's definitely something we want to accomplish within our vision. So that's something that we know is out there and needs to be done, or would like to do that. Okay, so show some cool stuff in LAMS. So enough talk. Let me see what time we got. Running out of time here. Okay, so just jumping to the portal. If I click on the LAMS icon, it'll navigate me into LAMS, and it knows I've got access to LAMS. And I'm just using some test data that we downloaded from Attains for Alabama. It's all public data. And so this is just kind of what we're using for our test and development work. It puts me right into the reporting cycle, and I've got this reporting cycle of 2021 that I've created. And we've already synced that from Attains, and also we've auto synced updated metadata from aquums into that reporting cycle. And then as the reporting cycle goes through changes, we track the history of the status of the reporting cycle. And then also in this page is where you are able to attach documents to the reporting cycle and then export the entire reporting cycle, including all of the assessments that are embedded within that reporting cycle. You do that here, and it will tell you what's incomplete, and it does a lot of checking, but I won't go into all of that. But you can export the entire reporting cycle here, including all of the assessments for the assessment units that were assessed, and including related action information and updated assessment units definition information. And then that navigates you to a page in Aquums. Because I didn't export here, it would take too long. If I exported here, it would show up here and I could navigate to Aquums, but I'll show you really quickly where that would take me. So that would actually navigate me over to Aquums, where we're leveraging Aquums capability to publish data to the EPA or submit data to the EPA. It would take me to this page where you can submit a previously created attains file to EPA. And it has a wizard that it will walk me through that submission process. So it's very quick and easy, just like in Aquums. In fact, it actually uses some Aquums capability. And eventually this Aquums capability will be extracted to the portal so that you're not within Aquums to do any of that. You just do it all from the portal. But it's, as I mentioned, it's an evolution that we're working on. Okay, so let me get back to attain or to lambs quick. So so that's reporting cycles in a nutshell. Monitoring locations, all of this information that you're seeing, this list of monitoring locations that can be searched through and filtered. The idea here is to allow the person that does the assessments to try to identify which locations should go with which assessment units. And unless you're really into attains and like submitting water quality assessments to attains, none of that might make sense. But you can also in Aquams state or set a preference that equates your monitoring locations to an assessment unit so that you just automatically have one assessment unit per monitoring location. Hopefully that would make sense to some people on the call here. But the key thing here is you've got attributes of your monitoring locations. So for example, the county, maybe the HUC 8 or HUC 12 or the reach code or whatever information we happen to have. And we've got it tied to an assessment unit. And you might say, well, I want to find similar monitoring locations that maybe they belong in the same assessment unit. And so the idea of this tool is to help the person that is making these decisions identify which monitoring locations should go together with other assessment units. And this is just our first crack at this. We think there are other things that will eventually be included. For example, the type of sampling and the different parameters that are being sampled may have an effect on how you group monitoring locations into assessment units. But this is the kind of tool that we're working toward. And then what you can do is once you've identified or honed this list of similar monitoring locations, you can then generate that out as a CSV or an Excel file or whatever you want, and take that over to Aquums and make appropriate changes in Aquums to the relationships between the monitoring locations and the assessment units. So that's just very quickly in a nutshell kind of what we're doing in the monitoring locations, and there will be more functionality as we move forward with that. The assessment units is kind of the meat where all the action happens. It's kind of the meat of the system. This is where everything where a lot of the work is really done. When you come into this, you see a list of assessment units, and you can filter it. It's automatically filtered by reporting cycle. So everything you see within this list and all of the underneath, all of the sub records that you drill into when you're doing your work within this menu item, it's all within the context of a reporting cycle. And so that's why you always have to have this filter set at least, and then you can filter it further. But just to quickly give you an idea of kind of what we're doing when we do assessments in LAMS, again, a lot of this information came over from Aquums, and then within each reporting cycle, I can then snapshots the metadata for me. I can say, okay, this is active, currently being assessed, and I can enter in a few attains type data elements that Aquams doesn't necessarily know or care about. I can update information about that assessment unit here on the unit definition tab. And then when this all flows to attains will be updated with this information about the assessment unit. Won't go into too much more detail on that tab. Kind of a cool feature is the data points tab. So for this assessment unit, LAMS is actually reaching over to Aquams and snapshotting all of the data that's related to the monitoring locations associated with this assessment unit. And then it's summarizing that data here. And I can set a range of the data that I want to include in my assessment that is within Aquams. And then for each parameter that is summarized, I can actually expand or contract the date range to get the number of data points I need included in my assessment. And then eventually we'll have functionality here that allows you to specify which data is actually included in your assessment and why, and which data is excluded from your assessment and what the rationale for exclusion is, all the way down into the specific data points. So you could exclude at any level you need to, or include it at any level you need to. And this is where our tie in Aquams to the water quality monitoring portal comes into play, because you could not only have your own data show up here, but also data from maybe nearby USGS sites or volunteers or other people that you need to, if you're required to include other people's data in your assessment, you could have it all pulled in through the portal into Aquams and then into here for evaluation. Okay, so the next step is actually performing the assessment based on the data you have. And so this is, I've got a few rudimentary entries in here, but I really love the user interface on this. Right now, for this particular assessment unit, we only have one designated use, the propagation of fish and wildlife. As we only have one associated designated use, so there's only one column showing up. But if we had 5 designated uses, it would be a matrix. You would see each of the designated uses out across the top, and then you'd fill in these the cells in the middle here. It's just a really slick user interface for filling in the attainment trend and seasons for each of the parameters associated with this assessment unit. And so this is where you can flag whether the parameter is delisted or if it's a new listing, flag whether it's a pollutant, what the status is, whether you can put the organization IR code, which I think that doesn't apply to tribes, so we may need to do some work there. And then if there are sources, you can pop up a little dialogue here and create your list of sources, et cetera, et cetera. But then just very quickly, based on your research of the data, you can put in, whether, what the attainment is, whether it's stable or improving or degrading. And then if there's seasonal information, you can put in the seasonal, you can put in the list of the different seasons and then what the start and end dates for those are. And then also if it's impaired waters, you can put the required impaired waters information in, and all of that is coming from, all of that is information that attains needs. Once you've filled that in for each of the parameters that are being assessed for that assessment unit, you can then go fill in the overall assessment for each of the designated uses. Again, in this case, we've only got one designated use, but you can fill that in quickly, put in the overall assessment for the whole assessment unit, and attach any documents for that particular assessment unit. The summary tab is just a place to see everything you just entered for that assessment unit in one place, and you can generate it as a PDF file and print it out. And if it has attachments like documents attached, you can generate a zip file with the PDF and the associated documents. It's just a place to see everything in one place without having to click on anything. It's just all flattened out for you. Okay, so just in the really quick time we've got, I'm running out of time. Okay, so really quickly, there is an actions module that the actions live outside of the reporting cycles, just like the assessment units do, but the actions do get associated through the underlying pollutants to the associated assessment units and the assessments of the parameters that happen to be parameters that are causing pollution, I guess is the way I'd put it. So anyway, I won't go into the details on that, but it's a fully functional actions tracking module. And that's LAMS in a nutshell. I won't go any further because I'm kind of out of time here. One last thing I want to show quickly. If I jump back to GS Elements, so Todd's, I've mentioned several times, open and illegal dump site reporting and survey management capabilities. That's all. You click on the shared portal here. Again, the logo and the name will probably change in the near future. Single sign-on, just like everything else. You can log your open dump or illegal dump sites, record your initial and periodic site surveys, and it'll auto-calculate a suggested health threat score, which can be overridden if you don't think it calculated it correctly. But if you think that, then you should let us know and we'll fix it. But it's overridable if for any reason it needs to be overridden. You can also generate those out to a PDF form that's the same form that you would normally fill out by hand. You could share that data via virtual exchange service if you want. That's already set up and configured and working. And you don't have to share everything. You can set things to shareable or not shareable. And then also shared via, it's as I showed earlier, it's shared via the common map with Aquans and Stacks. So I'll just show you one or two of these really quick so that we can get to question and answer. But in the portal, if I click on Todd's, it immediately dumps me into my open dump site list. And it's only for I'm only seeing the open dump sites for my organization that I have rights to. And so one I entered earlier today was, I entered this Wolf Creek off dirt road site. A lot of these fields are kind of auto filled in for you, or the pick lists are limited based on your organization. So that helps you quickly fill these out. So, why make you choose things if we already know the answers? So here's one I've filled out, and then you can create a list of surveys. We've got several for these. Here's the latest survey for that dump site. You fill in the proximity factors and location information, hazard factors, and what is being dumped at that dump site, the health threat. And then you can hit the recommend button. It'll auto calculate the health threat score for you. And in this case, it's recommending a much higher score than I have. So I'm going to, probably because we changed some data.
Hi, Mark. Hey, we want to be respectful of people's time, and since we're coming to an end, I think I would like to offer the opportunity for tribes who are interested in this program to contact me directly, and we can set up a one-on-one, overview of the program and see some really cool stuff with people who are using this every day. As I said, I really do see this as a tool that is essential for developing scientifically defensible data. I see it as a tool of strengthening our tribal sovereignty, especially when we're engaged with other agencies, state or federal agencies, in which sometimes tribal data collection is called into question. So I see this as a tool that we can use to move forward to build our programs and again, strengthen our tribal sovereignty and our standing when we're arguing with additional outside agencies.
Yeah, and I apologize for how much time that took to get through some of it. I think that there's just a lot to show, and it's really exciting. We didn't even get to Stacks, which is the air quality solution. We didn't really get to talk much about the underground storage tanks solution, which is kind of the new project that's about to get underway. And but there's just so much that you guys are providing, that NAEPC's providing, so it's amazing. Um, I did want to mention we had this one little joke about how, some of the stuff we're trying to show isn't quite done yet. So there's always this joke of Dilbert saying, "Oh, if we had this, you'd be saying I got to get me some of that," But anyway, the truth is, a lot of what we're showing, it's really there. It's being worked on. It's not vaporware. Some of it is still being worked on, but other of it is almost ready to go, and we're about to release it for use. So, and Aquam's been there forever.
And one of the tribes that I want to mention is my own tribe, Hoopa. Hoopa, as you know, has developed their own water quality standards that have been accepted by EPA and are promulgated as a federal standard for the tribe. And so they have collected data for 50 some odd years, water quality data, and they became excited about our program with Aquams and the exchange network, because one, it's cheaper, it was going to cost them less, and it was going to be able to do more, and their ability to transfer all their data over into the system was very seamless. So they are very independent, working by themselves, inputting data and building, even going to be participating in more of the platforms that will and tools that will be available with the system. And the great thing also is that once the tools are built, they are pushed out to the tribes, anyone who's a user, for free. So you don't have to pay for upgrades.
That was a great presentation, and I'm sorry to have to do this to you guys, but
well,
I got a
call
schedule
us.
to keep. It's time.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there's some tools within Excel events where you guys can create like a group to come and meet later or set up a meeting. I think Shasta had mentioned earlier. So, use those tools to keep this discussion going.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for allowing us to share what we've got.
Yeah, thanks. It was great.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Bye.